First things first, uh, give us just a little bit of your backstory real quick, and also why you ultimately made the decision to run for city council.
Yeah, well, I grew up going to parks cleanups. I grew up delivering meals to the homebound. Public service was part of my life growing up. So at 21, the age of 21, right out of college, I became a public school special education teacher in our community at the John F. Kennedy campus. And I immediately saw that so many of our children were homeless. I saw children sneaking home sandwiches and milk for themselves and their family, that food insecurities, kids without health care. The needs of my children extended far beyond the classroom. A few years later, I was elected U of T chapter leader, and I'd advocate for my teachers within my building. Sometimes I would lobby in Albany, but we didn't live in a city that truly valued our public workers and valued the dignity of work. I currently chair the Committee of the Aging on Bronx Community Board 8, and I see so many of our seniors living with fear. Before the pandemic, it was a crack in the sidewalk. It was the store across the street closing down. They'd have to travel far to get what they need. And now, of course, it's fear of going outside for getting COVID and not being able to get a vaccine. Every step of the way along my career and my service, I see a city that does not truly support the people who need help. And I'm running for city council to make sure our community has a voice, especially during this recovery, and to ensure that our children, working families, older adults, and people with disabilities have an advocate in City Hall.
Eric, you touched a little there on your previous personal and professional experience. How does that best qualify you for this position versus some of the other candidates here? How does that make you the best choice for the voters?
Yeah, I saw every day as a teacher the impact of city policy, whether it was on housing, whether it was about our workers, whether it was about food, about traffic. I saw the impact of all those city policies through the eyes of my students, through their families, through their colleagues. And so all of these policies we have in the city, they're not just things I read about in the paper. There are things I heard of firsthand from the students I interacted with every day, firsthand from the older adults that I work with, firsthand from the workers that I fought alongside with.
There's a lot of issues facing this district. I mean, there really are. And you touched on a couple of them there, but in your mind, what is the biggest issue, right, is currently facing the people in the 11th district that you want to represent?
Yeah. The person who wins this seat will immediately take office. And the thing that we have to deal with immediately is ensuring that our population is vaccinated. Right now, we do not have an equitable distribution of the vaccine, whether it's a language barrier or a technology barrier. The very people who are so often left behind and are vulnerable are remaining vulnerable and left behind. Our older adults struggle to manage the online system. And if you're an older adult with a child or a grandchild to navigate that system with you, great, you can book an appointment. But so many others are being left behind. Communities of color, whether it's because of a trust issue with our city or a language barrier or a technology barrier, do not have the same access to the vaccine. And so as a city council member, I want to immediately bring the vaccine to where people are and streamline the process for getting an appointment. And whether that's utilizing our community centers for the sites and to help people book, utilizing our senior centers to help people get appointments or using them as a site. And of course, mobile vaccination sites, pop-up centers. And all of this has to be done with a multilingual approach to ensure that no community, no person is left behind with regard to vaccinations.
And the vaccine is obviously a major concern for seniors, a community that you mentioned is very close and dear to your heart and what you work on. But even prior to COVID, there are so many issues facing seniors here in the district that need to be addressed. In addition to the vaccine, separate from that, what other issues regarding seniors would you want to address as a city councilman?
A lot of the issues facing our community are felt most acutely with our senior population. For example, when the MTA came last year and wanted to cut express bus service, it would have been a great inconvenience for a lot of people. It would have been detrimental to our seniors who rely on our express buses as the only fully accessible means of transit. When a store closes, a local small business closes in our community, it pains me. That's a local small business owner, losing their store. It takes away from the character and quality of our neighborhood. But a lot of us can hop in a car, can hop on a train, go to a different store. Maybe we even order online. That is not the story for so many of our older adults who rely on the ability to walk across the street and get what they need, whether it's fruits or vegetables, whether it's their dry cleaning, getting their nails done, whether it's going to the hardware store. Our older adults rely on our local small businesses to get what they need. Our older adults rely on our bus service to get to where they need to go.
You mentioned small businesses there. They've absolutely been ravaged by this pandemic. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot that city council members can do. There's a lot they can't when it comes to helping out small businesses. But that being said, they need help. So, if elected and if put in right away, what would you do to help them out?
I started on one of my stops on my small business tour last week. I met a small business owner, Raquel, who runs a business, KMJ Lovewear. She designs and sells adaptive clothing for children with special needs. It's a very important business for so many families, and it's just her. She's doing everything. And with all the programs available, whether it's loans, whether it's grants, whether it's programs the city has, she needs a human being from the city helping her navigate all those. It is already so much to run a business, to sell everything, to do everything. That's add on top of that, applying for grants and loans, negotiating your lease. She needs a person there from the city helping her navigate the different programs available. And that could be done immediately. More long-term, we need to tackle the very same problem that small business owners are facing now that they faced before the pandemic, which is rent. And so I would advocate for vacancy taxes and commercial rent regulations that will, in the long run, help so many of our small businesses stay in our communities and help our community retain its character, help, of course, those older adults have the closeness of a business, of course, help our small business owners keep their business.
The economy was one thing that obviously the pandemic really brought to light as far as needing assistance in small businesses. The other thing that came up really big was education, and what was dealing with who gets what kind of resources, and the quality of education that everybody gets. You're a teacher. You know better than most what can be done, what needs to be done to help our education system. What can you do from this position?
Yeah. So at the very beginning, I've been outspoken on what needs to be done in the schools. And right away it was, we got to close the schools, right? We had the city dragging its feet and closing the schools. We didn't know the damage the virus could cause, how it spread. Over the summer, I called on the state to cancel state exams because all of our schools are doing education differently. Some hybrid, some fully remote, some 30-minute classes, 45-minute classes with a system that's already inequitable. I think we need to start planning long-term, which has not been what's going on, right? It seems as though on a Thursday, you find out the next day on a Friday, school's closed. Over the weekend, you find, it's open again. That was the feelings that so many of us, not just teachers, students and working families struggled with, because we all have to make plans and arrangements and to figure out how to best provide for our students and our families. I think what we need to do is start looking long-term at a reopening plan that prioritizes younger children, children with special needs, and high needs families, meaning homeless families struggling with homelessness, students, ESL students, and things of that nature. And we need to start prioritizing the families who are losing the most. And yes, there's academic loss, but more importantly, I see the devastation to the social, emotional, and mental health of my students. That's what I saw when I was teaching them over Zoom every day. And it's deeply troubling to me. So we need to start bringing in students slowly, full time, as safely as possible.
Now, all that remote learning was a big stress on parents, obviously, but that was already adding to stress that they're dealing with when it comes to possibly, rent, or being worried about being evicted, or any other level of housing issues that we've seen over the last couple of years right here in the city. Is there a path you feel to truly affordable housing here in the Bronx that people can actually afford to live in and don't have to worry about this anymore?
I think yes. I mean, I think there's always going to be worry out there, but I think there is a path to affordable housing for everyone, right? Part of it's top down, meaning expanding the right to counsel so that more people qualify, both geographically and raising that threshold so you can earn a little more and still qualify for a lawyer. But also building units that are actually affordable. A lot of the affordable housing that's going up is not truly affordable. And we need to be asking more of our developers. We live in a very developer friendly city, but it's time to start asking more of them for getting billions of dollars in tax subsidies and lots of givebacks to give back to the community in which they are trying to build, and to really build comprehensively and ask what are they going to give to the communities in which they're trying to build. And bottom up, we need to be supporting our workers, make sure their jobs are being retained, make sure that they're earning fair wages. And that is why I've rallied with workers, whether they grocery store workers at Key Food, safe staffing ratios at Montefiore, or my own workers, or my own fellow teachers, to make sure that workers are treated with dignity and that we can actually afford the affordable apartments that are going up.
Eric, you've been outspoken when it comes to issues with the MTA, and like we spoke regarding when they were trying to remove bus lines from the district. The MTA is going to be facing, and they've mentioned they're facing, their own economic hard troubles right now. There's always the possibility of more cuts, more issues, and more things affecting the people in the district. How do we address this situation with the MTA, and how do you make sure that the people in this district continue to get the service that they deserve?
Well, this is always the problem, right? Anytime there's a recession, anytime there's a problem, it is always the working families, working class New Yorkers who are asked to give the most. And when you raise the fare of a subway, when you cut service, it is essentially a tax on working families. We need to start asking a little more from those who have done historically well during this pandemic. And it's also time to start putting pressure on the federal government to step up and provide even more stimulus. And I was very proud to have over the years organized phone banks for Democratic candidates congressional candidates throughout the country, and also for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And now that we have a Democratic Congress and Democratic president, we can step up the pressure on them to provide that federal stimulus to help bolster the MTA, right? That is what gets people to and from their jobs. And we need the MTA, and we need to do it in a way that does not continue to ask working families to give more and more.
Eric, where do you stand on the issue of police reform and the issue of where the role of the NYPD should be in the community, and what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, I love the way you asked that question, because it really does come down to what is the role of the NYPD. And there are a number of bills in the city council that I'm supportive of, which seek to clearly define that and say, you know what, if you're working a food cart, your interaction is not going to be with the police. If you're a police officer, you're not going to be interacting with food cart vendors. That's not a police issue. If you're someone struggling with a mental health need, a nonviolent mental health need, that's not really the role of a police officer. If you're a nonviolent person struggling with homelessness, that's not the role of a police officer. That's not a safety issue. That is very often a mental health or a social service issue. So more clearly defining the role of police officers in our city is vital to ensure that police officers can deal with crime and not act as social workers. And a lot of the stories we hear, whether it's a YouTube video on the news or stories that my students would tell me when they would come into school, are really often, unfortunately, born out of issues that were originally where someone needed help. They didn't need a police officer. They needed social services or mental health. So shifting those roles, I think, is vital in ensuring that we do have a safe community safe communities in our city.
Eric, obviously campaigning for this has been difficult, and it's been different than most other campaigns, but you do get a chance to speak to people from time to time. I know that, and speak to the constituents that you want to serve from time to time. What's one of the things, what do they tell you the most? What have you been hearing the most from people as far as what they need from their city council member?
They need to be heard, right? And, fundamentally campaigning is still the same, right? It's talking to people. The job is about people. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. And quality of life is huge, right? There are big ticket items like the vaccines and school reopening and small businesses. Those are three top big picture priorities for me. But it's also the needs of individual people. You know, last year, when the pandemic really took hold and everything shut down, I shifted from campaigning to doing outreach to our older adults. And the calls were, hey, it's Eric Dinowitz. How are you doing? How can I help? And I shifted in whatever way I could to constituent services. And a lot of the complaints were about their absentee ballot. So I called the Board of Elections and advocated for them and sorted out their absentee ballot needs. Some people were hungry. And so I organized food deliveries for them, connected them with people in their building who were doing food shopping. Most recently, I spoke with a woman who lives in a NYCHA development in our district who didn't have heat. So I connected her with people in the building and people who could take care of that. And now she has heat in her apartment. Now that's a type of work I do now. That's the type of help a lot of people need. Yes, sometimes it's these big structural reforms, but sometimes people need to be heard. They need someone to listen. They need someone to act on their behalf. That's the work that I've done in my capacity as a citizen, as a district leader. And that's the work I will do as a city council member.
All right, Eric, two more questions. I'm going to let you go. First one's fun, and then we'll wrap it up. So here you go.
All right.
What is a fun fact about you that people may not know? Something people may not know about you.
Something they may not know. They may not know that I am a Jewish a cappella singer.
Really?
They may know that. They may know that, but they may not. Yeah. It's true.
Can we get you to sing a couple bars here?
You can't, but you can. But you know who did hear is it's an a cappella group.
Yes.
So I really need my 5 other guys with me. But you know who has heard me sing, who has heard my group sing is former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. We had a nice little private 2-minute concert for them at their last Hanukkah party.
Wow.
Which was quite an experience. And bonus points, we kind of saw Ruth Bader Ginsburg sticking her head out at the door to also eavesdrop on our little concert.
Oh, wow. Did they give you any feedback?
Well, they gave the biggest smile I've ever seen the president give, and they danced along. And that was kind of the best feedback you can get, is when you get the president to dance along to your music, you know, they don't need to say anything.
Very cool, Eric. See, learned something new. That's fantastic. That's very cool. All right, last thing for you here. You know, you're heading into a special election here. Multiple candidates on the ballot. Voters are going to be trying to pick who they want their next city council member to be.
Yeah.
What do you want people to remember and have in the back of their head about you when they head in to cast their vote that's going to make them fill in that bubble next to your name?
It's important people know that my career has been rooted in our community as a teacher, as a labor leader, as an advocate for our seniors, and as an advocate for people with disabilities. And I will ensure that they have a voice in City Hall.